You've probably dealt with this before. At the beginning of a project, everything feels well organized, but as you start adding more features, more apps, more complexity, things quickly start getting messy and overwhelming. So I'm currently working on a project for a company called Black Fox Distillery, and I want to take you through the process of what it's like to set up a project for a real-world client. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how the project is structured, how everything is organized, as well as how easy it is to add new parts like a mobile app, a documentations website can all be added without turning your project into an absolute mess. So this is how a typical Medusa project is usually set up. You have your backend repo, which is the Medusa API, and then you have a storefront repo, which can be Next.js, Remix, etc. Now, this setup works absolutely fine if you're just building a simple e-commerce store. But generally, as the complexity of your project grows, you start adding more components, libraries, etc., you'll find that there is a lot of shared logic between the backend repo and the storefront repo. So here's a common scenario. Let's say I created a custom function called getProductBadge. I'll likely use this in my backend repo for things like dashboards, routes, widgets, but I'll probably also need that exact same logic in my storefront repo as well. In a typical standard repo, what you'll end up likely doing is just duplicating that exact same function and simply just copying it over to your storefront repo. Now you have the exact same function, just duplicated across two different repos. Now this is okay if you're just building a simple project, but as you can see, as your project starts to grow in complexity, you'll have hundreds of these functions that you'll just simply have to duplicate across different repos. This is just not ideal. This is where a monorepo comes in really handy. Instead of having different repositories for different components of your project, you have a single repository with all of the different components. So you have your Medusa application, you can have your Next.js storefront, a mobile app, shared packages, shared plugins can all be managed through a single repo. So in the case of our product badge function, now, instead of having to duplicate this across different spots on our project, we can simply declare it in our shared packages and share that logic across different components of our project. So let's say in the future, there's a case where you need to update this product badge function. In a standard repo, you would have to go into each repo and essentially duplicate that logic. Versus in a monorepo, you can just simply update it in the shared packages and it would update wherever it's being used in the rest of the project. Now, this is another scenario where a monorepo really comes in handy. For example, let's say if you wanted to add another application to your project, for example, a React Native application. In a typical standard repo, you would end up having to create an entire different repo and a project and then connect it to the rest of the components. Within a monorepo, we can simply just add that new React Native app to our existing project. And this eliminates a lot of duplication. For example, let's say if we have a shared getProducts function, this simply fetches the Medusa API to get all of our products. This function is likely going to be more or less the same regardless of which storefront component that we use it in, whether it's a Next.js app or a React Native app, we're going to call more or less the same function. In a typical standard repo, you'd have to essentially duplicate the exact same code and have it in each of these repositories. But in a monorepo, we can add that function to the shared packages. You simply use it across different parts of our project. So jumping into some code, we often use this 306 starter monorepo for a lot of our projects. And this is a public repo, so I'll leave a link for it down below. So just a quick walkthrough of the different files. We have an apps folder which contains all of our different apps in this monorepo. For example, we have our Medusa API, we have a Next.js docs website, we have an Expo mobile app, as well as our actual Next.js storefront. In the packages folder, this contains all of the shared logic across our different apps. For example, a TypeScript config file, shared UI components, any shared logic that can be used across multiple different spots across our project is included in this packages folder. We also have a plugins folder. These are all of the different reusable Medusa.js plugins that we'll use across our Medusa application. So for our real world project, we can manage all of the different apps through a shared workspace. So I can simply go pm dev and I can simply run all of the different apps through a single command. So we have our Medusa application, we have the View app, and then we also have the Quick app as well. Now, as you can imagine, it would be really easy to add simply more applications or more plugins, APIs, etc. to our project without increasing the technical debt. That being said, a monorepo setup is not automatically cleaner. You still have to be intentional about where things belong and follow those rules as your project grows. What a monorepo does give you is a clean project architecture that is meant to grow and scale. Again, I hope you found that helpful in putting together your next project. I'll be making more videos on the Black Fox project and taking you through the entire process of putting together a project for a client. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and we'll see you in the next one.